So this is we're still looking at Eli Divrei Bris, the book of responsa that is a response to the Reform Book of Responsa in 1819, and the this in particular, this letter in particular, is from the rabbis of Prague, which is interesting because, of course, Prague factors into the whole argument about the organ and shul because it's cited as precedent for saying that you could have an organ and shul. And so you can imagine that they would maybe be a little more defensive. So they write here that it sounds like they all wrote it together, the rabbis of Prague, and they're writing it to the Beis Din of Hamburg. And he said, it's a little bit poetic. He says, "Oh, with a very, with a heavy heart, we have, read what you sent to us, the Igeret Hamachala, the letters of disease. I think they're talking about Nogat Tzedek. Woe is to the generation that this has happened. Woe is to the ear that has heard this. The Pritze Hador, those who have broken through the boundaries in the generation. Now, of course, the heresy." And sort of poetic things against it. They've built their own bama, their own altar. Lahar feast tefillah, lahad feast tefillah bertzonam, to print new prayers, just whatever they want. Elu Torah hefker he. Torah is hefker. It's forsaken. Lihipalo bertzana, as if everybody has just the permission to pray however they want. Kadmonim astro l'shanot shum davar. Is here that the early ones forbade us to change anything in our prayers. Whether that's true is an interesting question. And certainly to pray in another language. One who goes from language to language, yeshkama shinuyim umashchis mivla kavanas tefillah. It's going to take away, if you go from one language to the other, and you're going to take away the intent, the kavanah, the ability to focus on prayer. And these are the words of prayer are written. They're written, I guess it means with Zalzim. People are just different than the Chassam Sofer. Chassam Sofer, it battled them on a halachic ground. But here, it's different. Here, they're sort of zooming out and seeing them sociologically. That he says here, all of their intent is just to be like the other nations. Shiomru shehem chachamim yotim yishar b'nei Israel. That the other nations will look at the reformers and will say, "Oh, they are more than the other Jews." They're say here, they're not Jews and they're not Christians. That which they play the organ on Shabbos, it's forbidden. Even if it's done through a non-Jew. And here the rabbis of Prague say, and that which we play instruments in our shul, it's for Kabbalat Shabbat. Haminhag po shemchuyavim hamizmarim lahasir l'salek miyadam klizemer chatzi shakodim baruch. And our custom here in Prague is that those who are playing the instruments, have to put them down, this is an important distinction, or the instruments in Prague. First of all, we don't, but it makes sense that the Chassam Sofer, in a way, is further from it. Like, he doesn't have to point out the difference between the Reformers and the Orthodox. He can just put it on halakhic grounds. But here is a little closer to home here in Prague. Prague, first of all, is more cosmopolitan. And this site, and they're, in a way, I mean, they do play instruments in the shul in Prague. So the fact that the rabbis of Prague are pointing out, what seems obvious to us from later on in the 19th century, but perhaps wasn't so obvious in 1918, makes sense. They're the one pointing out that the sociological differences are what matter and what are enormous, because you could find a way halakhically. Masha Nidfal, Sefer Puzzle, that which they in Dessau, called Noga Tzedek, who Choshech Ra, it's evil darkness, and you can't rely on it at all. And we know the people who are in that book, who are brought in that book, it's false. And it is to make people trip up. Anybody who's changed, he says the general rule is anybody who wants to make a change, the burden of proof is on them. The frat that it's okay. And certainly when it comes to prayer, Hashem Hatov Yimali Mishal will fill their desires. So overall, the Chachamim Dino Kavar Charutz, anybody who violates the words of the rabbis they should be punished. Tefillah Totia, Tuma, Sita, their prayers. And that's enough. This was in 1919. And here's who signed on it: Rabbi Ezer Falch, Rabbi Landau, Rabbi Knowledge. Okay. So that was the Rabbi Ezer Prague. Very short, to the point, basically saying, it's true we do it, but it's a totally different situation. It's the why is very important. Yeah, it's interesting how different that is than the Chassam Sofer, who's in a different land. Now, this is Rabbi Mordechai Bennett, which is interesting because it's a little bit harder to understand. Rabbi Mordechai Bennett of Nikolsburg, his student is the one who went to Germany, to Berlin, and really had it out with Rabbi Hirsch over the question of the community, whether you could stay in a community with the reformers. Rabbi Hirsch had said no, and that rabbi, I'm blanking on his name, had said you could, and he got Rabbi Ber Bamberger to be on his side also. His rabbi is Rabbi Mordechai Bennett of Nikolsburg. Okay, we'll try this. This language is a little bit harder, but he says, hello to the Bezdin of Hamburg. Ira Lakan Chacham Sfardi Echad from Izmir. There's a rabbi from Izmir, Ba'ota Sefer Mechuna B'Shem Noga Tzedek. Sounds like he's saying that the person who wrote Noga Tzedek, I don't think it's true that it's from Izmir, which is published in Dessau. And I saw there are two tshuvas. Me'achacham Rav Shem Tov, Dr. Blarna, Chacham Rabbi Yaakov Chai. Now we saw the one from Rabbi Yaakov Chai. And we saw, this might be Rabbi Rekanati, Shem Tov. And they permitted it. And according to me, it's forbidden. And he says the rabbis who I just mentioned, these two rabbis, they lo dayik yafed. They did not reckon with the halacha details like they should have. And in the future, they will have to give a reckoning for that. Rishon. So now he's going to try and argue halachically against what's written there. Very different than the rabbis of Prague. Rishona, the first answer that was published there was that this is not an issue of walking in their ways. Because it says in the Maharik, which we saw, they on Shulchan Aruch, that it's only when that's chok shel avodah zarah. That's only when it's actually done for avodah zarah. But an organ is played not only in a church, it's also played in concert halls and other places. That was the Maharik said. Oviyeshbo mishum pritzut, or the Maharik had said, if it has pritzut, if it's a violation of modesty, those two factors, if it's specifically for avodah zarah or if it's a violation of modesty, that's what makes it walking in their ways. MS Kain Shamba Maharik, and he says that's true. That's written that way in the Maharik. Remember, over there it had been this question Maharik had been dealing with of can a doctor, a Jewish doctor, wear a special coat that's made for doctors, or is that was that walking in their ways? And the Maharik had said, since it's neither specifically for avodah zarah, for idolatry, and it's not a lack of modesty, therefore this coat that's called a kappa, they're allowed to wear. But you have to look closer, he says. This is the Sanhedrin. It says in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Tanya Amrle over there in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, I think we looked at that. There's this question of whether doing something is walking in their ways. What was it my time there? Not exactly sure. I have to look it up. Oh, it had to with a sword. And it was written in the sorry. This is this has to do with those either with might have to do with making the monuments. That was one issue. Was that in the Torah we saw that our ancestors made monuments, but it became forbidden later because it was something that idolaters took on. And so the question is, do you say, even though it's something the idolaters do, it's permitted because it says it in the Torah? This might be slightly different than the monument, but I think something similar. Masik lo chukahi. And over there it says it's not a chok. It's not something without reason. It has a reason, and therefore, if something has a reason, it could be it's permitted because you're not doing it just to be like that. And over there it says that whatever this was not done as just to worship idols. If it was actually something that was just done for idolatry, even though it's written in the Torah that our ancestors did, it would not be permitted. But over here, he says, this is chok akum. This is something that non-Jews do for idolatry. And therefore it shouldn't help. Whether they did it in the temple or whatever. Oh, this was talking about whether you can burn the clothes of the king. That the non-Jews burnt the clothes of the kings, nobody else could wear them. Can Jews do that? And over there, it seems like the reason is not about walking in their ways. It's about honor for the king. And he says this could be a proof against the Maharik, that it seems like even though it's written in the Torah, you're not allowed to do it because he's showing that in certain cases you're not allowed to do it because it is something that that we might, even if it's written in the Torah, and even if it's written in the Torah, even though it's written in the Torah, and even though it might be used for it might be for a different reason, it could still be Uvachupatem, a violation of walking in their ways. Stop here. Okay, have a good day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You bet.
Bye. Bye.